Hey everyone, Varric here. So this video is going to be on Heroic Horridon. Now as with the last Heroic fights, this fight is pretty similar on Heroic as it is on normal. There's really only one added mechanic added to this fight, and I'll get to that in a minute. First, I just want to make sure that you're still prioritizing all the certain adds on each of the doors. Um, as, of course, being on Heroic, everything's going to have more health and do more damage, so it becomes very important to make sure you're avoiding what you need to avoid and prioritizing the right adds on each of the doors. Of course, the first door is always going to be the Waste Walkers until the Dinomancer pops. Get him to 50%, click the Orb of Control, have Horridon crash the door, and move on. Make sure you're watching out for sand traps too, because those will do a lot of damage on Heroic. Second door, again, Venom Priests are still your number one priority. Make sure you're interrupting that poison. That poison on Heroic will start to tick for a lot of damage, meaning it becomes imperative that you or whoever you decide to assign is interrupting Venom Bolt Volley. That cannot go off probably more than once, maybe twice, before the raid-wide damage just gets out of control. So again, it becomes very, very important that gets interrupted. Now the third door, again, is still going to be the same adds. You're still going to prioritize the Frozen Warlords and make sure you're staying away from the Frozen Orbs. However, just like on normal, they seem to have a lot more HP than the other adds. On Heroic, they have a tremendous amount of health. It's at this point where your raid is probably going to need to pop Heroism and Bloodlust, especially for the first few kills. As these guys need to get burned down as quickly as possible, you're going to need that much of a push to get these guys down quickly, because they do have a lot of health. And then the fourth door, again, same thing. Target one Amani Warbear at a time, and then kill that Beast Shaman, and then target the next Warbear, and so on. You definitely don't want to have more than one Beast Shaman up at a time, as their totems and their chain lightning is very, very painful. You definitely don't want to be having to deal with more than one Beast Shaman at a time. Now, once all the doors are down, again, you're going to be dealing with Horridon until War God Jalek pops. This is where the fight can get really ugly really quickly, because one, you're going to be dealing with the new ability, which I'll get to in a second. But War God Jalek is still going to be doing his Bestial Cry, except it does a lot of damage. In fact, you probably won't survive more than 3 of those before it ripes your raid, maybe not even 2. So he needs to die extremely fast, which means you need to just burst everything you got on the guy. If you didn't use Heroism or Bloodlust on the third door, this is where you need to use it. Now, the new ability that I've been mentioning throughout this video is cast by Horridon. He will cast this ability every 60 seconds, and it's called Dire Call. Now, this ability does have a few things I need to mention. And now, the first thing being is that it does a lot of raid-wide damage, so your healers definitely need to be preemptive with the heals before this ability goes out. It just does a lot of damage. Of course, the tanks are going to be in a world of hurt, whether they're tanking Horridon or the ad, so it's just imperative that your healers are really on top of the Direhorn call. The Dire Call. The second thing this ability will do is any adds that are alive, or even later in the fight if War God Jalek is up, it will increase their any enemy's attack speed by 50%. So again, it just makes the tank's job a little harder, because everything's going to be attacking a lot faster. But there's nothing you can do about it. It's always going to be cast every 60 seconds regardless. Now, the third and the biggest difference for Heroic, it revolves around this next part. Every time that he casts Dire Call, a ad will spawn. It's called Direhorn Spirit. Now, the way this works is, at the beginning of the fight, every time he does Dire Call, a random ranged member is going to have this ad spawn to them specifically. What I mean by that is, if you get chosen with a Direhorn Spirit, only you can see it and only you can attack it. Nobody else can see it, and nobody else can help you attack this ad. And I say attack because you can't actually kill it. It has a ridiculous amount of HP. There's no way you could kill it without completely destroying your raid-wide DPS. Your only goal throughout this fight, when you get a Direhorn Spirit, is just to keep it away from you. If it should get within melee range, you're probably going to die. It will probably one-shot you. I believe it does something like 450 or maybe 500k melee damage once it one hit, and you're probably done. So it's very important that you keep it at range. The good news is any attack that you do will keep it at range, whether you put your pet on it or if you directly attack it. However, I definitely recommend a little bit of a cheat. If you decide to either not attack it, or if you decide you don't want to put your pet on it, you can just place a snake trap down. Now what this will do is as soon as the Direhorn walks over this, the snakes will just keep attacking the Direhorn. And of course, as I said, every time he gets attacked, he will get pushed back. And because the snakes last, I believe it's for 15 seconds, he will almost get pushed completely across the arena, which buys you a lot of time to just concentrate on the rest of the fight. However, keep in mind that you need to be actively attacking him as he's running over the snake trap. I've noticed for some reason that if I'm not attacking him when he walks over this trap, even if he's the one to trigger it, the snakes will go after whatever I'm attacking. So you definitely need to be targeting him and attacking right when it walks over it, so you make sure the snakes are actually on him, and they just will continually push him. Again, it's kind of a little bit of a cheesy tactic, but it works, and it definitely gives you a lot of breathing room during the fight. Now, you can also put your pet on it if you decide to do that. Because, of course, anytime your pet attacks, it will just keep pushing it back. But you do lose a little DPS that way. As I said, normally you're probably just going to park your pet on Horridon the entire fight, as you're going to be target switching so much, it's probably not worth having the travel time with your pet between all the ads. Well, unless you're BM, of course, now with the advert of 5.3 and the Beast Cleave, that may change. But at survival, I usually just park my pet on Horridon and then just AoE the rest down. Now, there's a few things I need to mention about this Direhorn Spirit, is that it's very buggy. And there's a couple things that will bug it out completely. The first being that if, for some reason, whether it's your pet or you, or if the snakes, for some reason, should ever push the Direhorn Spirit through any of the walls in the arena on the outside, it has a very high chance to get bugged. And what I mean by this is, if it should do that, it will just start evading the rest of the fight, which means you can't attack it or push it back, or nothing you do will work, and it will eventually reach you and then just kill you. So just be very mindful of where it's kind of getting pushed back so it doesn't get pushed through a wall. It doesn't seem to happen all the time, but I've had it happen at least once. And it's definitely very annoying because there's nothing you can do to keep it from doing that once it starts evading. The second thing, and it happens more often than the wall bug, is if you feign death. For some reason, if you feign death, it will no longer, the actual Direhorn Spirit will no longer target you. Now, you might think that's a good thing. However, as I said earlier on, this ad, only you can see this ad and only you can attack this ad, meaning that if it targets somebody else, they have no idea that it's coming and they cannot see it, which means they're probably going to get killed and they won't know why. So you need to refrain from using feigned death, even if you're about to die, because if the ad's no longer targeting you, it's going to wipe somebody anyway. So it might as well just go ahead and attack you for some reason if it's getting too close. But that's pretty much the fight right there. Again, the Direhorn Spirit is just the major mechanical change to this fight, I should say. Now, there's also a few other things I need to mention. As I said earlier, it will prioritize range at the start of the fight. However, as the fight goes on, it will eventually it will spawn for the melee and then lastly the tanks. And this becomes dangerous because the Direhorn Spirit will spawn right on top of Horridon. And because Horridon is so big and sometimes the melee are kind of right underneath him, they may not see it exactly when it spawns, and it may just immediately melee attack them, and they won't have any chance to respond or get out of the way. It's happened a few times, a couple of our melee and even our healers that weren't prepared, because again, it's just random. It just chooses people at random. So again, it's just important that that your raid, especially your melee and your tanks, start to become more prepared. Usually after the last doors, when the melee and the tanks will start getting their Direhorn Spirit. Now, obviously, it would be sooner if you have more melee than ranged. That will change depending on your raid makeup. And as you're progressing through the fight, and obviously until you start getting further and further in. Your melee and healers, and especially your tanks, may never see the Direhorn Spirit until you get that close to that one kill. Your first kill. So it might take a few attempts for them to get practice at it once you start getting into that last phase. And earlier, as I said, the last phase becomes a real strain on your healers because there's just ridiculous amounts of damage, especially when Jalek comes out and starts doing his bestial cry. And there's a potential chance for Dire Call to be spawned right after that. And probably it's a good chance it's going to kill your raid unless you have personal cooldowns and raid healing cooldowns going off. It just gets ridiculous amount of damage. But again, just make sure you're keeping in the back of your mind that you have, when your Direhorn Spirit spawns on you, that if it's been away for a while, that you're doing a mental check to make sure you're keeping an eye on it, because you don't want it to sneak up on you. Because it's done it to me a couple of times. I've got that tunnel vision, on the ads or whatever I'm doing at the time, and I might forget about him because he's been pushed all the way back across the arena. I also highly recommend that if you don't have a Direhorn Spirit, after the first or second Dire Call, that you don't stand next to Horridon. As the Direhorn Spirit itself will spawn on him, and if you're too close, it could just immediately hit you and you'll die. But that's pretty much it. There's actually a pretty cool macro to use for this particular fight for the Direhorn Spirit, and I'll put it down in the comments down below so you can use it for the fight. It's pretty handy. Basically, all it does is it'll target the Direhorn Spirit, and whatever you decide to use to push it back, whether it's snake trap, your pet, or an attack, and then you're done with that spirit, whether you pushed it back far enough or you've done your trap or whatever. The macro will immediately target your last target, so you won't have to try to find out what you were attacking, or especially if it's like on the doors and you're trying to attack one of the priority ads. You want to make sure you can get right back to that without having to tab target all the way through the ads. It's a very helpful macro. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully the video was helpful. If I missed anything, or if you have any questions, concerns, or complaints, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and I'll be more than happy to answer. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you later.